For today's business matters, defense spending has investors shooting for the stars. Space startups reported their second strongest quarter on record for funding. Global investment in startups climbed to more than $3 billion in the quarter ending in June. Compare this to $2 billion in the first 3 months of the year. This is based on data from VC firm Seraphim Space. Increased defense spending is expected to boost the sector's prospects, notably the Golden Dome missile defense program, which Seraphim says has driven investor optimism in the space sector. And Elon Musk is hoping to add Tesla horsepower to his AI startup, but not combine the two. Musk ruled out a merger between the car maker and xAI, but as the CEO of both companies, Musk said he plans to hold a shareholder vote at Tesla about an investment in the AI company. A user had asked Musk on X whether he supported a merger. He said no, but noted that if it were up to him, Tesla would have invested in xAI a long time ago. This also comes after the Wall Street Journal reported that Musk's space rocket firm SpaceX would be investing $2 billion in xAI. A superhuman debut for the new Superman movie. The film muscled up an estimated $122 million to lead the weekend box office in the US and Canada. Adding in international markets, Warner Brothers said it expected weekend sales to reach $217 million. The success of the movie is critical for Warner Brothers and its DC Studios division, which has struggled to match Disney's Marvel superhero films. Shoppers couldn't turn down the deals bringing the latest Black Friday in summer sales events. Adobe found that online spending in the US soared to more than $24 billion. This was during a stretch from July 8th to the 11th and across US retailers. Several major retailers slashed prices during the period, including Amazon, Walmart, Target, and Best Buy. The report found shopping on mobile devices dominated transactions during Prime Day, which drove 53% of online sales. Adobe also found overall discounts were about the same, but particular categories saw even better deals like apparel, which was about 24% off compared to 20% last year. The world's leading AI chipmaker is showing support for America's efforts to re-industrialize tech manufacturing. This comes as the Trump administration has pushed a number of policies to try to revive declining manufacturing industries in the US. In an interview, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang said the ability to make things is valuable for economic growth and as a way for people to have a career without advanced degrees. Huang said having a rich ecosystem of industries and manufacturing is a smart move, saying it would make the US better and reduce its dependence on other countries. The Department of Defense is looking toward the future. Today, the Pentagon's Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office awarded contracts to accelerate the adoption of advanced AI capabilities. Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and xAI were offered contracts with $200 million ceilings. Musk's xAI announced its Grok for government product line. Grok 4 is part of its package and marks the company's most advanced artificial intelligence model to date. The new contracts come as government agencies expand their use of AI. President Trump has also moved to loosen regulations on the industry. People across the country are set to pay more for ketchup, salsa, and other tomato-based foods. Starting today, Monday, the U.S. is pulling out of a 3-decade-old tomato price agreement with Mexico. The move is to make way for nearly 21% tariffs on most Mexican tomato imports. That could mean higher prices for Americans at the grocery store, like pizza, parlors, and anywhere that uses tomatoes. Some restaurant owners who use imported tomatoes say they fear the jump could put their business in jeopardy. However, some U.S. growers say it's about time for the tariffs meant to fight dumping or the practice of selling cheap exports into a foreign market to undercut homegrown products. The tomato suspension agreement has been in place since 1996, essentially setting a floor for tomato imports. The federal government is raising the price of stamps. Senior U.S. Postal Service Representative Marty Johnson confirmed Saturday that the price of first-class forever stamps is increasing by 5 cents, rising from 73 cents to 78 cents. Johnson called the jump a, quote, rational and realistic approach. The price jump goes into effect Sunday. The world's largest economies have just 1 month to reach a more durable trade deal as businesses on both sides of the Pacific wait for negotiations to wrap up. Chinese exporters are rushing orders out now. Here's more.
There's a fragile tariff truce in place right now between Beijing and Washington. Chinese exporters are capitalizing on this break by pushing out orders and seizing market share closer to home. This comes as Chinese producers face weak demand at home and harsher conditions in the U.S. The U.S. is where Chinese producers sell more than $400 billion worth of goods every year. New customs data reveals that Chinese exports regained momentum last month, outbound shipments rising nearly 6% year-on-year in June. This beat a forecast by Reuters and growth in May. Shipments to Southeast Asian nations were particularly strong, jumping nearly 17%. Exports to the U.S. grew about 32% month-on-month. But growth year-over-year remains negative. June was the first full month Chinese goods benefited from reduced U.S. tariffs. Now Beijing and Washington have until August 12th to reach a more permanent deal.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang is preparing to fly to Beijing on Wednesday, his second trip to China this year. But the plan is raising bipartisan concerns among U.S. lawmakers. 2 days ago, 2 U.S. senators sent a letter to Huang urging him not to interact with entities tied to the Chinese military or intelligence bodies. NTD's Flora Hua has more.
Huang's second China trip is happening just 3 months after his first. Microchip giant Nvidia plans to launch a new artificial intelligence chip designed for China later this year. A group of bipartisan senators expressed their concerns in a letter, saying Nvidia's chips could boost China's process of modernizing its military, and that could put U.S. national security at risk. Beyond that, high-end semiconductors have also become a major point of leverage in U.S. trade standoff with China. In April, the Trump administration doubled down on semiconductor export controls, banning more chips from being shipped to China. That includes a special type of Nvidia chip, specially made for export to China. It's a lower-end model designed to comply with U.S. export restrictions. Despite all the challenges, the company has been trying to maintain its access to the China market. According to an official report from Nvidia, China is the company's 4th largest market, despite U.S. export restrictions, accounting for 13% of the company's total sales. Nvidia spokesperson declined to comment on the CEO's upcoming trip. Something else to note, on Wednesday, Jensen Huang visited the White House to meet with President Trump and his team. That's the day Nvidia became the first public company to top $4 trillion in market cap. Flora Hua, NTD News.
European Union ministers agreed today to prioritize negotiations with the United States to avoid threatened 30% tariffs that the EU trade chief said would wreck transatlantic trade. Here's more.
The EU agreed on Monday to prioritize trade talks with the US to avoid crippling tariffs. That's after President Donald Trump said he would impose 30% levies on most EU imports from August the 1st, an amount which the EU trade chief said would wreck transatlantic trade. However, diplomats said there's still time to hammer out an agreement to prevent this. European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič had said he'd sensed that talks with the US were approaching, quote, a good outcome for both sides. But this new tariff threat on Saturday had, quote, created a new dynamic.
So if you're talking about 30% or 30% plus, there will be a huge impact on trade. It will be almost impossible to continue the trading as we are used in a transatlantic relationship. And if you look at the impact this would have, so I have to say the transatlantic supply chains would be heavily affected on both sides of Atlantic.
He said the EU would need to prepare for all outcomes, including countermeasures. The Commission has already agreed to a package of potential tariffs on $24.5 billion worth of US goods, but has proposed suspending this package for now. It's also likely to seek a green light for a second package that'd hit $84 million worth of US goods. Some EU ministers have agreed with this suspension, saying it's too early to impose countermeasures.
Today, Bitcoin crossed the $120,000 level for the first time. This marks a milestone for the world's largest cryptocurrency as investors bet on long-sought policy wins for the industry this week. Here's more.
Bitcoin crossed the $120,000 level for the first time on Monday. Investors bought the token as they bet on long-sought policy wins for the industry this week. The US House of Representatives is due to debate a series of bills later Monday. It aims to provide the digital asset industry with a regulatory framework it's long demanded. One leading analyst said Bitcoin is riding a number of tailwinds.
Hello, Bitcoiners.
One of those is US President Donald Trump's crypto-friendly approach. He's called himself the crypto president and urged policymakers to revamp rules in favor of the industry. The analyst said institutional demand and expectations of further gains have also made investors bullish. Bitcoin is up about 30% for the year so far. Its rise has led to a broader rally across other cryptocurrencies over the past few sessions, even in the face of Trump's chaotic tariffs. Ether hit a 5-month high of close to $3,060, while XRP and Solana gained about 3% each.
Wall Street closed slightly higher today as investors remained cautious amid President Trump's latest 30% tariff threats on the EU and Mexico. Markets are steady ahead of key economic data and the start of earnings season. Despite rising trade tensions, muted investor response reflected growing resilience to Trump's moves. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq hit new records last week, but energy stocks fell on oil price drops, while communication services gained on strong performances from Netflix and Warner Brothers. And that's it for today's Business Matters.